speaker now. Miss Darlene Garcia. Who knows Darlene in here?
We do.
Woo-hoo, she's awesome, right? Amazing. All right, so Darlene is a business owner with 20 years of experience in human resources, customer service, and corporate training combined. A young widow who was working in the corporate world at the time of her husband's death. Darlene experienced firsthand just how poorly equipped organizations are to support employees that are going through loss, change, or stress in their lives. Darlene has turned her pain into purpose by sharing her story and inspiring hope and light in others. There is a huge belief that people should leave personal problems at home and leave work at work. The truth is, trying to shut off or delay human emotions leads to more stress, unhealthy habits, compromised productivity, dependability issues, and so much more. Darlene is excited to share how you can increase the compassion in your organization and within yourself to improve your quality of work and life as a whole. Please join me in a round of applause as Darlene comes up to share with us today as our guest speaker.
Yeah, so I kind of changed the title of my presentation to Pain and Purpose. Sorry, Jer. But I will be talking a lot about compassion and how do you build that, not only in your organization, but also for yourself. But I thought that Pain to Purpose was so much more fitting for what I'm going to talk to you guys about today, because over the last 5 years, that's been my journey. And it all started with pain. But I always like to start by introducing my family. So the bottom picture there is my husband Frank and I. We were married for 24 years before Frank died. And we have 3 beautiful, adult, amazing children. Our son Nicholas, we had him when we were 18. Frank and I got married at 19, so I had the honor of spending all of Frank's adult life with him as his wife. 3 years later, we had our daughter Desiree, and then 3 years after that, we had Kiana. All of my kids are married. All of them have kids of their own. So I am blessed to have 8 grandchildren, and I'm going to be blessed with grandchild number 9 on March 13 when Kiana has her second baby girl. Throughout my time as a wife, I was also very career-driven. And I worked in the corporate space for almost 25 years. I worked for Continental, and then they transitioned into United. And so I was one of those HR professionals that was policy-driven. If your attendance was at 8, you missed 8 days of work. Our attendance policy said once you hit 8 in a calendar year, you get terminated. So I was that HR professional that said, you're out. If I had a leader that came to me and said, Dar, we have an employee that is not performing very well, my HR advice to them was manage them out. So I was one of those really hardcore, again, policy-driven HR professionals. If an employee was out for someone dying in their family, our company offered them anywhere from 3 to 5 days of bereavement leave. If you didn't have any other leave to take, then you had to come back to work. And then Frank died, and I became that employee. It was the toughest time of my life, and I will tell you that nothing that I've ever learned prepared me for that day. So after Frank died, about maybe 2 months after, I knew that I needed to get some sort of help. I tried everything that I could here. I went to church. I prayed to God, even though I was so mad at him. I saw a psychologist for 2 months. It was actually how I was able to get out of work for much longer than 3 or 4 days. And then I even joined a widow support group, and that was an epic fail. It's a whole other story on its own, right, Denise? And so someone introduced me to the Grief Recovery Institute. And I looked them up online, and they looked like they had something very different from what I've tried here on Guam. So being a airline employee, I had the privilege of going off island, and so I did. And I attended a 2.5-day workshop. And I didn't go there to heal or recover, because I had actually succumbed to the belief that I would never be happy again. I had lost the love of my life, and I didn't think that happiness was even in my vocabulary anymore. But what I felt I needed to do was learn how to control those human emotions that were so spinning out of control. Because I had 3 granddaughters at the time that Frank died, and they were so filled with love and light and laughter and joy, and even sadness for missing their papa. And I knew I needed somehow to get out of that emotional turmoil so I could be there for my grandchildren. So I found this workshop, and I thought that I was going to go there to learn how to control those emotions, but instead something else happened. Something that was so transformational that I came home, and even my sisters said, "You have this light around you." And it's not a cure-all. I'm not gonna lie, grief is something that impacts me on a daily. But I learned the most effective tools to help me through my healing journey and to believe in hope and light again. And so 6 months after I took this workshop for myself, I went back to the States and I got certified to become a grief recovery specialist. And my mom joined me, so what an honor, right, to have this journey and be able to do this work with my mom. And I actually now have a team on Guam. So fast forward, I did this in 2016, fast forward now to 2020, we actually have 9 grief recovery specialists on Guam and 5 in Saipan. So we're really trying to impact lives. And just really quick too, 3 of the members of our grief recovery specialist team are here, so I just want to introduce them. My mom, of course, Bobby Titano. Kate Baltazar Dodge, you guys know her. Kate's amazing. Kate was the deputy director 1 year when we had asked DOC, my husband was a DOC officer by the way, to do a posthumous promotion for Frank. It was another way for us to be able to honor him and his legacy that he left behind. And Kate and Tony at the time, Miranda, were so just full of gratitude, and it felt like this was an honor for them to do for Frank. So Kate was the deputy director at the time. This is when our relationship began, and I knew what a beautiful soul she was. And so when we had the opportunity to bring a trainer to Guam and certify more people to join our team, we called Kate. So she's a part of our team. And then we've got Bernice Arceo Miguel. If you guys don't know her already, Bernice is also someone with such a huge heart. And Bernice is what we call one of the dream team. So there's 4 of us that started grief recovery here on Guam back in 2016. And Bernice got certified 6 months after my mom and I got certified, along with Michelle Sasamoto, who isn't here with us today because she's in DC doing some mental health stuff. So anyways, we have a team here, and it's so amazing, guys. The grief recovery method is it's evidence-based. It is not it's not a clinical type of program. We are heart healers, but we do have a very structured method, and it teaches people how to effectively deal with their grief. Right now, I'll talk a little bit more about that through my presentation about why grief is something that we are so passionate about, and why giving grief a voice is something that we brought into our purpose-driven life that we all have today. And so as I've been doing this work, I also had to continue on my own healing journey, right? Because it wasn't just the death of Frank that I realized I had to work through. Grief is more than just the death of a loved one, and I'll talk about that also a little bit more in my presentation. But I had to work on myself, and one of the things that I lost when Frank died was my identity. Remember, I was his wife for his entire adult life, so I was Mrs. Frank Garcia. I did not know who I was after Frank died. I didn't know how to be anything than his wife and the mother of his children. And so I dived into this journey of rediscovery of being the Dar without the Frank. And through that journey, it was a huge struggle. And I knew I couldn't do it alone. So I hired a life coach. And through this coaching that I was able to partner with, I realized that it is so important to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. Because everything in my life, the moment Frank died, was super uncomfortable. So I didn't have a choice but to deal with it. And so I learned how to find the dar without Frank, and through that journey, I discovered self-love. It was the most amazing transformation other than grief recovery. And so again, I decided, you know what, if this is affecting me as a griever, it's gonna affect so much more people. When you lose someone that you really love, your life instantly changes, and a lot of times, you don't know who you are anymore. And so I went out and got certified again, and got my life coach and health coach certification so that I can continue to help the people that came to me for healing embark on the next journey of their life. How do you find self-love? How do you look within so that you don't have to look for others to fill your love bank? Because that's where a lot of our deficiencies come from. And truthfully, that's where a lot of our losses come from, right? And so giving grief a voice, this was something that I am still completely passionate about. So in 2018, towards the end of 2018, I left Guam. I told my dream team, I said, guys, I gotta go. I got a lot of work to do, and I feel like the world is calling me beyond Guam. So you guys gotta do grief recovery here while I take off. And the reason I did that was because, again, giving grief a voice, that's my mission. And I felt like I needed to build up my speaker platform. And I needed to do that with a wider audience. So I left Guam, started to build up my speaker platform, advanced my certification with grief recovery, and continue to share my story, to honor Frank, and to always heal hearts and give grief a voice. So that's where I'm at today. So I don't live here. I'm only here for a short time. In fact, I think I leave next week. We leave next week? Yes, we leave next week. And so it's been a journey for me, and it's such an honor to be up here today. I keep telling everybody that my journey will eventually lead me back to Guam, but for now, there's so much more to do in the world, and I will always come back because my grandkids, majority of them are here. 2 of my children are here. My mom and my sisters are here, and so it's important for me to come back home and always give back. I come back and I work with the team, and we build up partnerships around grief because we realize that grief needs to be normalized. It's so much more, again, than just the death of a loved one. So my journey continues. This year, 2020, Holly said 2020 is going to be a good year, right? It's not just a new year, guys. It's a new decade, right? A new decade of possibilities. So you heard about me as an HR professional, policy-driven, didn't care. If you messed up, you're out. And then I became that employee. So I'm still so super passionate about HR. I feel that, again, employers, organizations, leaders, coworkers are so ill-equipped when it comes to how grief impacts us in the workplace and why building compassion around others and within yourself is super important to be able to be successful in our world today. And so I am launching this new program. It's called Grief in the Workplace, or some other people can call it some other things. But I want to talk to you a little bit about my journey when Frank died, so you can understand why I'm so passionate about this. So the moment Frank died, my bereavement leave kicked in. My company gave me 4 days. Most give you 3. Never enough. Never enough. And to think that I was that HR manager that administered this policy and told people they had to come back to work, regardless if they were still grieving. Every time I think about that, it breaks my heart because I knew that 4 days wasn't enough for me. Whoever came up with the idea that time heals all wounds couldn't be further from the truth. It's one of the biggest myths of grief that we teach in the grief recovery method. I managed to be out of work for 3 months, and still, that wasn't enough. I came back to work, and I was still grieving, and I was a different person, and I didn't know how to operate as an HR manager, as an employee, as a person. It was just really difficult, and it was such a strange world for me. But everyone at my work was ready for me to come back. and get back to my normal routine. Everyone's like, yes, Dar's back. We're going to help her, we're going to help her, we're going to help her. 1 month. That was the support that I got. 1 month of them trying to help me to be normal again. But the truth is, I didn't know what normal was. So guess what? Because no one understood where I was coming from, I pretended. I pretended that I was okay. We teach in the grief recovery method that when you pretend to be healed, it's called Academy Award recovery. That was me. I pretended that I was okay and that I was healed because nobody got that I was still grieving. Nobody got that I had a hard time being in my office by myself, but I also didn't want to close the door because I didn't want to be alone. No one understood that getting in front of people and training again brought on so much fear inside of me. No one knew that I couldn't go out there and help managers terminate people because that wasn't in me anymore. I knew that there was something deeper that was going on. Right? Employers, you don't hire bad employees. You hire them because they offer something good. They're valuable to your team.
That's right.
But something happened along the way that brought them to this place. But we're in a society where we say, you know what? Poor performance, they're lazy, manage them out. Not true, not ever true. Right, so we have to get to the core of why these employees are there so that we can help them through and support them. The thing about grief is that we can't just shut it off. As much as we would like to turn off painful human emotions, it doesn't happen, guys.
Right.
We suppress, we self-medicate, we mask. But I will tell you that it comes out in other ways. Triggers, panic attacks. We get angry for no reason. We drink alcohol, become addictive. We eat food because it's comfort. Eventually, over time, if we don't work through these emotions, it affects our physical condition, and then we develop medical conditions. I was talking to a friend of mine a couple weeks ago, and she said, I went to the hospital because I thought I was having a heart attack. But then I got there and all my vitals were fine. The doctor said nothing was wrong with me. What's going on with you? What are you dealing with right now in your personal life? All of these things that were happening inside of her. I said, you had a panic attack. Yeah, that's what I had. You're suppressing emotions. Yeah, I am. Right? We can't disconnect our bodies, guys. So our bodies are meant to be an emotional processing plant. It's supposed to flow through us. When we suppress it and it becomes a storage bank, nothing good ever happens from that. More stress, more grief, more trauma, more negative things are going to happen in your life when you do that. The late Russell Friedman from the Grief Recovery Institute said that when your heart is broken, your head doesn't work right. And this rings so true in the workplace, right? How many times do we get employees come in and they have erratic behavior, or they distance themselves from others, or they become lazy employees? Something is going on with them, whether it's at work, maybe they're being bullied at work. Maybe they're dealing with a partner that's telling them that I'm leaving you and I don't love you anymore. Maybe they're dealing with an adolescent delinquent child that they don't know what to do with. Maybe their parent just died. Maybe they had a miscarriage and they didn't want to tell you about it because they're ashamed. So many different things impact our ability to focus at work. So one of the things that I teach in my return to work programs or grief in the workplace programs is this: the hidden cost of grief. The Grief Recovery Institute did an update on our hidden cost of grief. I think it was updated as of 2017. And in the United States, you're looking at over $7 billion of companies losing money because of these reasons, right? The first one up there being absenteeism. Our employees call in sick, yes, because maybe they do have a physical condition, but maybe their heart is just broken. Or maybe they feel that you're not supporting them, so they're not motivated to come to work, so they're going to think of a reason not to come to work. When I was working for United, I was the administrator of the FMLA leave policy. And I couldn't understand why people were putting in for FMLA for hypertension. I was like, what? How is that even a condition? Until I experienced my own grief, right? Other than the other physical conditions of like gout and diabetes and all of these things, hypertension, anxiety, depression, right? All mental health conditions, they can be. But guess what? It starts off first as pain. Something happened, and because you didn't deal with it, it now becomes a clinical medical condition. But it came from somewhere. What about making poor decisions, right? Manage them out, because they're not making the right decisions for our company, they're losing a lot of money for us. Why are they making poor conditions? Because when their heart is broken, their head doesn't work right. So they can't concentrate. They're not focused. This is what happens. Poor interactions with coworkers. One of the things that we do as grievers is we isolate. Grieve alone is one of the biggest myths of grief out there, other than time heals all wounds or be strong. So we tend to isolate because guess what? No one understands what we're going through, or people are going to judge us and say, hurry up. You're taking too long to deal with your grief. We've got work to do. Or, you're a strong person. That's not like you. We didn't teach you to be like that. Right? So we tend to isolate because people don't get it. Like I mentioned, grief is more than just the death of a loved one. Divorce, miscarriage, stillborn babies. How about moving? How many of you guys have military family members? Right? The military families grieve all the time. People don't realize that when you move from one location to another, yeah, it's exciting. We're going to go move to North Carolina. So much more possibilities out there than on our little island of Guam. And yeah, it's exciting for a little bit, but guess what? You're missing home. You're missing island life. You're missing everybody that you left behind. Kids miss their friends, miss their teachers, miss their school. Right? Because grief isn't just death. It isn't just that. Right? In the Grief Recovery Institute, we have two main definitions of grief. Grief is the normal and natural reaction to loss of any kind. Any kind. But the one that resonates with this graphic up here, for me, is grief is the conflicting feelings caused by the end or change in a familiar pattern of behavior. When you move, everything that was familiar to you changed or ended. That's grief. When your boyfriend or girlfriend tells you that they're leaving you, that's a loss of a relationship. That's grief. When you change jobs, yeah, you're excited, great, promotion. Guess what? There's inner fears. Oh my God, am I going to be able to perform? Can I do this? Maybe I'm not good enough for this position. You're scared, you're excited, conflicting feelings. That's grief. Financial changes in your life, more or less, still changes. Everything that was familiar to you. Oh, I just won the lottery, brand new house, I'm a millionaire. What the hell do I do with all this money? I don't know how to have a big mansion. Conflicting feelings, that's grief. Right? So we never associate all of these things as grief, and people think that grief is just, you're grieving because someone died. No, it's not. My grief, yes, that was what brought me to this journey, the impact of my husband's death. But I realized that it was so much more. When I retired from United in 2017, I called my sister the very next day and cried my eyes out. Oh my God, I don't have an income anymore. My friends, I'm missing them. Where's my office? Who am I going to hang out with? I was crying But the day before, dude, I was excited. I was like, yeah, retirement. I get to fly for free for the rest of my life. I was grieving the loss of teamwork, the loss of structure, the loss of accountability, the loss of friendships, the loss of knowing the ins and outs of the flights. Is it going to cancel? Is it not? Can I make this one? Can I not? Are we getting profit sharing this year? Are we not? I had all that information. No longer have it. That was grief. I was grieving heavy. But I was excited to embark on this new journey, right? So, conflicting feelings. So if you're a leader, a business owner, an HR professional, or just a coworker in an organization, I want to challenge you. I want to challenge you to disrupt the idea that leave programs are enough. Bereavement programs are not enough, guys. It's enough to say, out of sight, out of mind, go take care of your grief, and when you come back, you need to be that same employee that you were prior to this grief event that happened in your life. Doesn't work. So instead, I want to encourage you to develop what I call a healthy return to work plan. And these are the things that I'm talking to organizations about today. In 2020, this is what we're launching in the Grief Recovery Method, is how do we get grief, number one, to be normalized in the workplace, number two, so that leaders and HR professionals can build and create a more compassionate culture, so that when something devastating, traumatic happens with your employees or even with yourself, you're positioned, you're ready to deal with it, right? A healthy return program can mean so many different things. And I won't go into it in too much detail, but I'd love to talk to anyone that is interested in this, because it will work so well sitting side by side with your bereavement policy. What these healthy return to work programs are going to tell your employees is that you care, is that they now have a safe space to come back to, and that they can grieve and return to work and allow that to coexist for them. That's what this program will do for them. That hidden cost of grief, that $7 billion that, by the way, goes up every single year, those costs for your company will go down. The loyalty and commitment and productivity that your employees will now produce for you because you care enough to have this for them,
That's right.
will be exponential. I guarantee. Right? So it's more than just the death of a loved one, guys. You have to recognize that your employees, that you are human, and that as human beings, we will deal with grief and loss all the time. All the time. Compassion is a verb, it's an action, and it's something that we must choose to do. If you don't choose to show compassion, then other things will happen. You're going to lose relationships. You're going to lose yourself. You're going to continue to grieve. Building a compassionate workforce, I always tell leaders when I come in and I talk to them, is first about doing it with yourself, right? Because you have to lead by starting, right? Self-compassion is extremely important. When I worked for the airline, I remember back in 1996, how many of you guys remember, a lot of you guys are much younger, but how many of you remember the Korean Airlines crash, Flight 801, right? 1996. I was a supervisor at the airport, and we ground handled. In other words, we were the ones who took care of all of the customer service and the baggage handling for Korean Airlines. And so with that, when we found out that our airplane went down, we immediately had to go into emergency response mode. And I was one of the many employees within our organization that literally worked around the clock for 48 hours until Korean Airlines could come in and take over. And part of our job was to deal with the families that were checking to see if their loved one died or lived. I didn't go to the site because I couldn't. I didn't have the strength or the stomach to do that. There was the hospitals. We had the hospital center, we had the family center, and then we still had an operation to run, right? So 48 hours, imagine that, going from the airport to the family center to the hospital center and back again for 48 hours. At the end of that 48 hours, we did what we call a debrief, and everybody that was involved in Korean Airlines crash were mandated to go to this debrief. So as the leader of my team, I pushed everybody to go to these debriefs. Finally, the last one, they said, Dar, you haven't gone yet. Okay, I'll go. But I want to make sure that no one in my team was in my debrief. And the reason why is because I didn't understand grief back then. And for me, I felt like, number one, I needed to be strong because everybody expected me to be that strong leader. I was making sure everyone was okay. But because everybody knew me to be a strong person, do you think anyone checked on me to see if I was okay? Not one person. Because they all thought that Dar was Academy Award recovery. She got this. Right? So nobody checked on me. So inside, I was scared. I was scared to get on another airplane because over 200 people died that day. In an instant. I was scared. I was disappointed and I was angry in my leadership because no one checked on me, but they expected me to check on everybody else. And I worked for 48 hours straight. Took a nap here and there, but I worked. A lot of us did, right? So when you have compassion in your workplace, when you become human, when you know that you don't have to be strong, you won't get employees like me that will become disgruntled and not like you because you didn't check on me, right? If you're a leader, if you're a coworker, if you're a friend, you're a human. Show compassion to others. Show it to yourself. Don't think that you have to be strong in the workplace. Don't think that you have to have a stoic appearance all the time, right? Because being human means that we're imperfect, and we are. Right? We are. People will appreciate and value you more for that authenticity versus being someone that's fake, right? And the last thing that I want to leave you with, again, is that you don't have to be strong, right? The things that we teach in the grief recovery method are all around the myths of grief. And one of the biggest ones is to be strong or to be strong for others. But I want to invite you to change that definition of strength and know that to be strong is to be vulnerable, right? Brene Brown says that there's strength in vulnerability. And because we're humans, we can be vulnerable, right? So we don't need to be strong. We just need to be human. So lastly, I just want to invite you guys, if you're not following our team on Facebook, we are called Grief Recovery Guam and CNMI, right? Grief Recovery Guam and CNMI, it's a Facebook page. We post all of our events. We do community talks. So once a month, we're out there, usually at the Chamorro Chip Cafe. This next one is going to be at Ray on February 27th, 6 p.m. It's free. We invite everyone to come so that you can learn a little bit more about the programs that we teach. We invite everybody. We also go out and we partner with different organizations, both government, private, nonprofits, so that we can also do more guided grief talks that are more specific to your organizations and how the impact of grief is in your place. For example, when Kate goes out and talks to the Guard on Saturday, right? Is that Saturday? Sorry, I just have to plug you. So Kate's going to be our amazing representative for grief recovery. She's going to talk to the Army Guard at their Yellow Ribbon event. And again, right? Military, not just moving, deployments. Being away from your families all the time, moving. Military service members are taught and trained that when you're in combat, you need to have resilience, you need to be out there. You don't have time for human emotions, and I get that. But when you come back, yeah, you gotta deal with it. You also have to understand that your family support that you left behind are also going through a lot. Have to keep up the household, have to make sure the bills are paid, and then when you come back, guess what? You're grieving, so you're a totally different person, you're a stranger to your family, they're a stranger to you. This happens. It's a very common thing in the military, right? So if you want us to come out into your organization and talk about how grief can impact your workplace and what you can do, we can give you tips on how to manage through that and how to build a compassionate culture. And then if you're ready, we can also work with you in creating that return to work healthy program so that your employees will love you and trust you and want to bring you millions and millions of dollars to your company. All right, so does anybody have any questions before I end about recovery method, about anything? Yes, sir.
Thank you for sharing, and I'd like to offer a different. I'd like to offer a different perspective from what you've shared with us. So, when I first heard you speak about a year and a half ago, I think it was at Hilton, none of these ideas came to my head except for just right now. So, I want to speak from a life insurance and a preparation perspective, and then also from a medical perspective. So before, everybody in this room, if we can take care of our families, get your life insurance policies in place, all it takes is just one sacrifice. If husband and wife, sacrifice two times a month of going out. That's it. Because for as little as $50, you can get anywhere, depending on age and health, you can get anywhere from $50,000 to $200,000 of coverage. So one for husband, one for wife, one for mom and dad, right? Just sacrifice 2 times going out per month, and you will protect your family so that you are protected before you're in that darkness, right? You don't put the life jackets on the boat when you're already out to sea. They are already on the boat. So that's one. And then another thing is, if I may offer a suggestion, I don't know if you guys report medically to somebody's medical information, the database. So for example,
we do not.
Okay. So for example, if somebody sees a psychologist or is prescribed antidepressants, things like that, it does go on your medical record, and when you do a life insurance policy, that would be discovered, which is okay. That may or may not affect if you're approved. That may or may not affect if you're approved at a lower price. At a more expensive premium. So what I may offer is perhaps when counseling your patients or your clients. When your clients, you can perhaps ask them if, along those lines, if there are affairs in order, did they have life insurance, and if they did, perhaps you can offer, because what happens is sometimes people do a life insurance policy, and sometimes it comes back where they'll say, hey, we need more information on this, and depending upon that answer, it may make or break whether they get approved. So you can offer, hey, they went through my program, they are now graduated, passed with flying colors, constantly seeing, so that that could be something that you can offer clients so that they can, I guess, go through life insurance applications. But yeah, really, I thank you for sharing that, and that's really just something that I encourage everybody. There's a lot of insurance professionals in this room. Our office does it. Regine's family, they're very respected insurance professionals. Amanda's office does it. So, there's a lot of people that can help.
Thank you for that perspective, because you're right, and it's so difficult for families to grieve when their loved one didn't have life insurance and they're having a difficult time paying for even just the funeral cost. And so that is an added loss to the family, not just grieving the physical absence of their loved one, but how do they honor them and be able to survive if they don't have that life insurance. So thank you for bringing that up, because that's definitely a loss, right?
Yes, thank you for sharing. Also, just to piggyback a little bit about what you said, what's your name? John, what John said. What actually makes our program so amazing is that we don't actually report to anybody. And my name is Bernice. I deal with a lot of suicide prevention in the community at my I'm shaking and nervous because I talk all the time. It's just that, so the fact that we won't report to your work, we don't report to any type of agency, it is strictly confidential. What we do ask is that people fill out a survey so that the grief recovery student knows that we're doing our part as being a specialist. That's what makes this very unique, because there are, like Dar said, there's so much people grieving in the world, but especially our military community. They're not going to want to take any type of self-help program or even go to get evaluated, because then that goes on their record, and then that may prevent them from getting promotion, deployment, and all that stuff. So, being here on Guam, that we're a very small and tight, family structure that can have benefits and also pros and cons, right? Getting help for your grief can be very, people can be embarrassed, our culture, we're taught to be strong. So part of that, working with an individual specialist, they can tailor the program to you, and that the fact that we don't report it is what we're trying to communicate in the community, because this is very private and confidential. And at the end of the day, we just want you to be healed, and we want you to learn the tools, right? Because you're going to constantly grieve. And when you take a program, you're going to learn those tools for a lifetime. So that's a very good point. And I just want to reiterate that it's very private and confidential, and we don't report to anybody. So thank you guys. Thank you guys.
Just one more thing, if there's any mental health professionals in the room, I also just want to let you guys know that we are not in competition with any mental health professional. I think that we are in the same space of wanting to help people in whatever life event, trauma that they've been brought to their office for. But I think that we can actually partner with mental health professionals, and that's one thing that we are trying to do, is because we are heart healers and we get to the core of why someone is going through depression or anxiety, panic attacks, they've suffered some sort of trauma. The grief recovery method is so guided and safe that we actually have clients that come to us that tell us things that they've never, ever said to anyone before. And they also are put in a place where they feel safe and comfortable to bring up all of those human emotions that they've suppressed for such a long time, because they know through our method that we teach that, again, it's structured, it's safe, it's guided. And so our program actually can work hand in hand with the mental health professionals, because once we're done with them and they're able to bring all that stuff up, then the mental health professionals can begin their work of counseling or therapy to be able to help them with their clinical condition of depression, anxiety, or whatever other mental health condition that they have, because sometimes it is difficult. There's so much blockage that a person experiences because our bodies are designed to protect itself, that fight or flight mode, right? And so immediately our brain will shut down if something is too traumatic, right? That's why sometimes people say, I don't remember that, or I blacked out. It's because your body automatically protected itself. And so for a psychologist or a therapist to try and bring that up out of someone, a lot of times it's difficult for them. Because I will tell you, unless you took the grief recovery certification, you are not an expert in grief. Because that's not what they're taught. It comes from a clinical place, not from an emotional heart place. That's a huge difference between us and the mental health community. So I just wanted to point that out if there's anyone out there that is in the mental health community, that we definitely would love to partner with you.
Yes, Senator. Confident Dar, I just wanted to take a moment to really thank you for turning your pain into purpose. I know that a few years ago we had met and we discussed this, and you really wanted to be able to take what you had gone through and ensure that our entire island community has something to fall back on in the inevitable event that they lose somebody in their lives. And we took a look at the law, and we were able to make changes to the Guam bereavement law, not just for government of Guam employees, but for every single employee on our island, because it was a really staggering thing for me to learn that a a lot of businesses, especially small businesses, didn't have any bereavement leave policy. So that means that, somebody, let's say, God forbid, had a loss or a miscarriage or a death in their family on a Thursday. Some of them, if they didn't have FMLA or other things to fall back on, they might have to report to work that very next day. And we just know how impossible that would have been. And so without people like you in our community standing up and sharing your story, we would have never been able to get those kinds of policies passed for our community. So thank you so much, Dar, to you and your team.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.